You let me show you behind the frame what's going on. This is what I'm dealing with. I have this cat who is trying to eat my computer. This is
Years back, you were in Veeredu wedding, and everybody was talking about the infamous vibrator scene. More than the movie, it was Swara and the infamous vibrator scene. 4 years later, do you think people would be talking about this one particular scene? You have a stripper who's just about to take off all the clothes, and you're all shocked. So do
4 years
you
later,
think
I think it's like 4 years later, Swara sudhar gayi, and now she's like, Allah tauba, nahi dekhna, at Bhagwan maaf karo hame. I think that the boycott Bollywood campaigns are completely agenda driven. They're whipped up, they're constructed, they are hysterical, they have no factual basis on them, and they are profiting from it.
behenji, whether it's BTM or
Yeah,
more such
yeah, Behenji
Bollywood.
turned mod. Yeah, they used to say that. We used to have that term in my school as well. Yeah.
In school, college, Delhi University, I'm sure even at workplace. I mean, this is
Yeah.
so Delhi. But do you think that it's not really men, but it's actually women, who are coining these terms for the women? Do you think this actually comes from women and not really men?
I think that the term behenji is more than gender. I think it's kind of a class. It's a snobbish sort of class, thing. It's a class flex. And I remember that in school when we used to use these words, and I think that I wonder. I'm sure I used it a couple of times as well. And then you begin to realize how not nice it is, and how it's really derogatory, and how it's kind of like really kind of trying to categorize people in this slightly derogatory way.
Wow, too many instructions is what Swara is currently giving just to ensure that the video is recorded properly. But that, perfection is not just limited to interviews, Swara. We all know about, the films that you've been featured in. And another brilliant film that comes from you on September 16th is, you're going to be naming it. I'm not going to name it. You're going to
Jahan
name
Chaar
it.
Yaar. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly, and it comes like 4 years after Be the Wedding, which was your
Yeah.
last theatrical release, but you've also
Yeah.
had an OTT release.
Had
Yeah,
4 OTT releases in
yes,
2020 and 21. Yeah.
yes, but a theatrical release 4 years later. How
Yeah.
does it feel? I mean, what are you feeling right now? Yeah, 4 साल हो गए for 4 years.
I feel great. You're absolutely right. I'm really excited for a theatrical after 4 years. I think the time that has passed in the middle has been, so much has happened in the world, in our lives, in terms of COVID, a 2 year disruption as far as the film industry and theaters were concerned for COVID, just 2, 3 waves of COVID now. And, like so much has changed, right? In the world, in our lives, in my life personally. So in Veere the wedding, like now seems like, my God, when was that? Like seems like a different world. Um, but I'm so happy that Jahan Chaar Yaar is my next theatrical after Veere. That was a female-led friendship story. This is a female-led friendship story. One of my friends was like laughingly saying that this is Veere the wedding soaked in Raika tel, and I was
I
like,
read that. I read that on Twitter. Also,
yeah,
जिंदगी ना मिलेगी दोबारा,
Singh
so
na milegi dobara soaked in Raika tel as well. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the interesting thing and the fun thing about Jahan Chaar Yaar is that Bollywood, commercial mainstream Bollywood, has of course had friendship stories before. Of course, we've had road trip stories, coming of age stories. But I feel like this is the first time that you have a road trip coming of age story, friendship story, where the protagonists are four married women from like really small towns of India. So in some sense, I feel like the people that we dismiss as being Benjis. I think that this film has front and centered them, and is going to show you how cool, badass, sassy, and fun Benjis are. So I really, when I read the script, I loved the fact that we were reappropriating the term and just stripping it of all the derogatory connotation and sort of making Benjis cool again, so to speak. I really like that aspect. And of course, it's a beautiful script. It's an unpredictable script. And I couldn't believe it was written by a man. That
Hmm.
was I was wow, this or made by two men, like Kamal Sir has written and directed and Vinod Bachchan has produced it. And I was like, this is not bad if two men are getting together and making this really sweet, beautiful, empathetic, sensitive story and fun story about friendship and
Hmm.
women and what marriage does to the lives of women, but told in this really entertaining, fun way. So I think there's a lot of really interesting and fun, but also very genuine and honest things that this film is doing.
Right. In fact, you just mentioned the term behenji. I mean, it's so Delhi. Whether it's behenji, whether it's BTM, or more
Yeah,
such
BTM,
Bollywood.
Behenji turned mod. Yeah, they used to say that. We used to have that term in my school as well. Yeah,
In school, college, Delhi University, I'm sure even at workplace. I mean, this is
yeah.
so Delhi. But do you think that it's not really men, but it's actually women, who are coining these terms for the women? Do you think this actually comes from women and not really men?
I think that the term Behenji is more than gender. I think it kind of is class. It is it's a snobbish sort of class thing. It's a class flex. And I remember that in school when we used to use these words, and I think that I wonder, I'm sure I used it a couple of times as well. And then you begin to realize how not nice it is, and how it's really derogatory, and how it's kind of like really kind of trying to like categorize people in this slightly derogatory way. So I feel like that's really the power of good art and good cinema, right? That it can in an entertaining way, it can make you question some of the not so nice aspects of our own common sense, of our own behavioral patterns, of what we have been doing. And I think that this film does that in a really nice way. It doesn't only make us question our notions of what is a behenji or whatever, it also makes us question our ideas about marriage and family, and the idea of who bears the brunt for a khushhal family. It made me think that actually even I'm guilty. Like, I don't remember the last time I turned to my mom and I was like, so mom, what do you want to do for fun? Like, what's your idea of fun? I don't know if I've ever asked. I mean, I've done nice things for my mom, but I've never asked her what's her idea of fun. Or, what does she want to just do something for fun?
One of your interviews that Jahan Chaar Yaar is not a really Swara Bhasker.
People hear my name and then they associate it with being political or being controversial, or having some kind of social message, or some kind of like a political message, or some kind of krantikari message. And I was just trying to like jokingly say that honestly, there's really it the film is not, it's a Swara Bhasker kind of film in terms of its nice content, but it's not political. It's not. It tells, there's just a really nice way in which it's doing its job, telling its story uh, uh, in a very palatable way. I think that somebody said about boycott, and I was like, why do you want to boycott a film that's telling the story of your family, your mom, your sister, your girlfriend, your wife, people in your life? And I was like, yeah, sure. Take your mom and sister and all your friends to watch it, and then boycott it after that. Don't deny them. Let them watch it and then boycott.
So Swara, 4 years back, you were in Veeredu wedding, and everybody was talking about the infamous vibrator scene. More than the movie, it was Swara and the infamous vibrator scene. 4 years later, do you think people would be talking about this one particular scene? You have a stripper who's just about to take off all the clothes, and you're all shocked. So do
Four
you
years
think
later, I think it's like 4 years later, Swara sudhar gayi, and now she's like, Allah tauba nahi dekhna, at Bhagwan maaf karo hame. Yeah, I think it's like 4 years में इतना shame किया मुझे कि स्वरा सुधर गई 4 साल बाद, और अब अगर कोई कपड़े भी उतार रहा है तो मैं ऐसे डर के माफ करो भगवान अल्लाह तौबा करके भाग जाती हूँ वहां से. So I think that the trolls can consider it a victory for themselves.
exactly? I was just coming to that. The people who trolled you 4 years back, would now sympathize and have, more respect and be only lauding for the Sati Savitri Swara.
Yeah. So they had so many problems. I played a Sati Savitri. Literally, that's what my character is. She is the Sati Savitri of the group. She's the most traditional one in the group. She's the most meek one in the group. but yet you see so many aspects to her personality, and it's a really fun. It's a really different role from anything I've done on screen before, and it's also a really different role from. It's also a really different role from, I think, the public image that people have of
Have about.
me.
But
Uh,
do you think people would have had issues, with male nudity if you had shown that in film? I mean, look what Ranveer Singh has to face because he appeared in a photo shoot.
well, the censor board would certainly have had an issue, I guess, and
Yeah.
we would have had an unnecessarily an A certificate. I think that my take on nudity really is that, like, it you should, if you really need it, and if it's sort of, if your story is sort of, the nudity is like essential to your narrative and to the way, or the way in which you're telling it, then it kind of makes sense. Otherwise, in a country like India, it's just a hassle. Why do you want to? It it's unfortunate that it's like that, but just given the practicality of it, it just, like, families won't come to watch it. You're just cutting off a whole section of people in your own audience. You're unnecessarily getting an A certificate. The film is actually very sweet and fun and innocent, and in some way, the funny thing is that she doesn't even wait for him to become nude. She is
Yes.
like run away before he's even, like, she's the moment he takes his pants off, she's run away. So
So fun, yeah, Swara.
she's really cute. Yeah, she's such a Shivangi is such a funny character in
Yeah.
her reactions,
Yes.
and it was a big challenge for me. Like, can I play her in a way that makes all these sort of very, like, conservative
Ah,
mentality of hers lovable,
yes. I
and
was
can I
coming to
make
that.
yeah,
You
can
know,
I make it, instead of
yeah.
making it irritating, can I make it cute
Yes.
and lovable? And I hope that was my challenge in this film, and I hope I've been able to pull it
In
off.
fact,
So
you look so
we'll have to see.
comfortable. Yes. In fact, you look so comfortable in these rustic characters that we want to understand if there's a method, to how you play each of these characters or how you basically understand them.
I love the fact that I have become this, like, so my next film, Mrs. Falani, is
Yes.
also where I'm playing
Yes.
housewife from the similar milieu,
Yes.
and of course Ranjana. And I was joking with some people. I was like, I love how I've become the brand ambassador for the grehani and the housewife,
Yeah.
like the Griya Shobha, Sarita crowd, because I am like this single avara person
Yeah.
at large, like, making all these supposedly unconventional life choices in my life. So it's very funny that I'm the poster child for it.
You are.
But well, I think that the method is simply that well, I guess it helps that I've got family from these parts. Half my nani was from Banaras, so Uttar Pradesh, and my nana was from Bihar. So the Hindi belt is, half of my DNA is from the Hindi belt. I have a lot of extended family that lives like this. I have a lot of friends from these backgrounds. I think that when I was young, I was always someone who didn't, like, even though my family was very cosmopolitan and I speak in English, think in English, I very consciously upped my spoken and reading skills of Hindi, because I once was shamed in my very first play. I was shamed for having an accent when I spoke Hindi by a very dear friend of mine. And the person who eventually kind of helped me come to Bombay and became like a mentor figure for me, Ravinder. And he was like, "Why don't you know, how do you speak Hindi? Like, why are you rolling your R's when you speak Hindi?" And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, you speak Hindi with an accent." And I felt so ashamed. It was my first play in JNU. I felt so ashamed that I was like, that this is an accusation that will never be laid at my doorstep again. Nobody's ever going to say to me that you don't know how to speak Hindi. And so I actually learned, like, I did exercises to get my palate to, like those spoken exercises to get my palate to be more familiar with the Hindi consonant. So I just tend to that world very easily. It's a familiar word for me. And then I love working on language. I love looking at body language. So I know, I think in some sense my sociology helps, because I'm able to kind of locate characters in their social context and then be like, all right, let's, I can now, really work on body language, work on who's. So I always say that as a literature student, I do a textual analysis of the script the first minute I get it. And the next minute, as a sociology student, I'm like, all right, so this character, who's her mother, who's her father, what languages do they speak, what languages does she know, what has she grown up with, and that'll, determine what kind of body language she has. So I have a whole system to
Hmm.
build my character, and like small nuances in my character. So everyone says that, oh, you seem like such a spontaneous actor, and I'm like, no, nothing in acting is spontaneous. It's a craft. You have to, you have to build. You have to work on it. You have to build it. So
Yes. Good to know that you don't believe in cancel culture, Swara, but look what's happening to Bollywood. I mean, the campaigns, to boycott Bollywood, and they have their own agendas. What do you have to say to that?
yeah, I think
You
that
think the movie will suffer? Yeah.
well, I think that the boycott Bollywood campaigns are completely agenda driven. They're whipped up, they're constructed, they are hysterical, they have no factual basis on them, and they're profiting from it. Today, I've seen tweets, and I've tweeted also that there is a tweet that is literally asking for money. It is asking for donations and for payment. There are payment links that are available. So I don't know what more proof people need to see that there is an agenda, that it's a business, that it's a campaign, that is completely constructed. I don't believe that. I mean, they're a nuisance for sure, and it's the kind of unnecessary negative attention that nobody needs. But how much does it actually affect business? I don't know. I think that there are lots of other things that are happening, that have happened. We've had 2 years of COVID. Cinema halls have been shut. This is the two worst years in the history of, if you look at Indian cinema and theater experience. This has never happened before, that for 2 years, like, cinema halls couldn't open. When they opened at 50% capacity. That math will lead to flops. If you can only run your theater at 50% capacity, your film is anyway going to flop
Yes.
at the box office. Then in those 2 years, people's consumption patterns have changed because the OTT swooped in and everyone took subscriptions of OTT.
Mm.
Producers who had to get their ready films released, so that because they had finances to, like, and loans to pay back, they released films directly to OTT. So now if a film of Amitabh Bachchan and an Akshay Kumar and a Varun Dhawan is releasing directly on OTT, then of course your audience is going to be like, well, I can just watch it here. So you've also changed the consumption pattern of the audience.
Mm.
Then COVID is still going on. I've just recovered 2 weeks ago myself. So people don't want to go into the hall. If you have, young children who are not vaccinated or elderly parents, you're not going to risk them. COVID is not over yet. So, there's been all of this context.
Yes.
And on top of that, you have this kind of 2-year long negative vilification campaign of Bollywood after Sushant's suicide. So I mean, it's really an industry that has been attacked, I think, very unfairly,
Mm.
and with no basis, with no substance. So I feel like a lot has been going on, and I think that the attempt to vilify Bollywood is very, very much a political and a constructed, agenda-driven campaign.
Hmm, hmm. So, what according to you can be done? What is your solution to this? What would you like to send out as a
So the
message?
first thing I'd like to see and say is that mainstream electronic media should stop giving it so much wind. Stop fanning it. Stop covering it. Why are you covering it? Who are these people? What is their qualification or credibility to talk about Bollywood? What do they know? Why are you believing a group of nameless, faceless, random losers who also seem jobless about what they are saying about Bollywood? Why is the media covering it? People are not consuming it as much as media is covering it. And also, I think perspective is really important. Y'all have gone on and on and on about Lal Singh Chaddha and Raksha Bandhan, like, as if flops don't happen before. Flops have happened from the time that the film industry was made, the box office was made. If there's going to be a flop hit, there'll be a flop also. What is the big deal about it? There's so many films that were hyped and big. I remember when Roop Ki Rani Choro Ka Raja was releasing, we were little children, and we desperately wanted to watch it. It flopped. It was the most expensive film of that time, and it was a big flop. And then I remember there was like this huge thing. I mean, go back to before that, cult Indian films that are now taught in universities abroad. Sahib Bibi or Ghulam. It's supposed to be an iconic film from an auteur filmmaker, Gurudat Saab. It was a flop at the box office. Andaz Apna Apna, another legendary cult iconic film. That was a flop at the box office. So what? And we talk so much about flops. This year, we've had 5 hit films that no one has talked about. Suryavanshi, Gangubai Kathiawadi, Bhool Bhulaiya 2, Jug Jug Jio, and Ek Villain Returns.
Yes.
In 10 months, Bollywood has given you one big hit at the box office every 2 months. This is after COVID, despite COVID. That's not bad at all. Why are we only talking about the 3 South Indian films that were hits and not talking about the 5 Hindi films that were hits? So the narrative itself is inaccurate, quite simply speaking. And even those 3 films that have in the South that have worked are from four language industries. So their films are also working. Crisis is if there is a crisis, as there may be, I think it's a moment of disruption that is undeniable, and that's not necessarily bad. I think it's great if Indian audiences are diversifying their taste palette of content. If South Indian films are also working in the north, that's wonderful. We're one country, right? There's nothing better to celebrate our diversity than business.
Well said.
And also, I do want to say that this idea that Bollywood is only the A-list actors, that in itself is wrong. Bollywood is made up of thousands and thousands of named people who you don't know, whose faces you don't see, technicians and crew members. Bollywood is an industry that has over 100-year period given lakhs and crores of people who did not have degrees, enough money to run their houses, run their families, build lives, buy houses. It's an industry that has over generations created employment. I mean, why do you want to snatch that employment away? I don't even understand. What is this campaign? It's so stupid, hate-filled, destructive, and like negative and dumb, and based on lies. It's the most ridiculous thing. Why is our media giving them so much hype? Some losers who are like literally there are tweets on my phone of them collecting and asking for money. Someone's running a business, man.
Right. Well said, Swara. You actually made a lot of sense, because this is something that people don't want to accept, and they really have their own agendas. When they are starting something like Boycott Bollywood. Thank you so much, Swara, for speaking to us, for sharing your views, and all the very best for your movie. We really, really do recommend it to all our viewers, and we would want them to go to theaters and watch
with
it.
your families and friends. It's a really fun, family friendly, friend friendly film. Take your gang, whichever your gang of choice, to go watch it. Definitely show it to your mothers and the women in your family, guys.
Yes.
It's really a lovely, heartwarming film in theaters on the 16th of September. And there's a discount on the first day because it's National Cinema Day.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much, Swara, for your time.
Pleasure.